Well, Senator, let me follow up by asking, do you think that the CIA and military intelligence agencies and the FBI have used the emergency provisions, both in law and by emergency agency, the Federal Preparedness Agency it's called now, to have contingency plans which threaten the liberty of American citizens?
Mr. Rowan, in due course, the committee will pass judgment on those questions. I'm not going to pre-guess the committee or prematurely attempt to pass judgment on this program. But let me tell you this. In the need to develop a capacity to know what potential enemies are doing, the United States government has perfected a technological capability that enables us to monitor the messages that go through the air. These messages are between ships at sea. They can be between units, military units in the field. We have a very extensive capability of intercepting messages wherever they may be in the airwaves. Now, that is necessary and important to the United States as we look abroad at enemies or potential enemies. We must know. At the same time, that capability at any time could be turned around on the American people. And no American would have any privacy left, such is the capability to monitor everything, telephone conversations, telegrams, it doesn't matter. There would be no place to hide if this government ever became a tyranny, if a dictator ever took charge in this country. The technological capacity that the intelligence community has given the government could enable it to impose total tyranny. And there would be no way to fight back, because the most careful effort to combine together in resistance to the government, no matter how privately it was done, is within the reach of the government to know. Such is the capability of this technology. Now, why is this investigation important? I'll tell you why. Because I don't want to see this country ever go across the bridge. I know the capacity that is there to make tyranny total in America. And we must see to it that this agency and all agencies that possess this technology operate within the law and under proper supervision, so that we never cross over that abyss. That's the abyss from which there is no return.
This is Derrick Broze. This is Derrick Broze of the Conscious Resistance. I'm here in Standing Rock.
That man is wanted in 5 different countries: Chile, Argentina, Brazil.
We've been fighting a long time. We've all lost so very much. So many loved ones gone.
Don't you fucking tease that horse!
You are not alone. There are pockets of resistance all around the planet. We are at the brink. Above all, stay alive. You have no idea how important you are. If you're listening to this, you are the resistance.
Hey everyone, this is Derrick Broze with the Conscious Resistance Network, and tonight is episode 134, Exit and Build or Keep Playing Slave Games. That's right, my friends. It is Selection 2024 in the United States. It's also hurricane season, so if you can hear a little bit of rain in the background, hopefully it's nice and not too distracting. But I'm back in Mexico, and it's hurricane season here as well. It's rainy season, so out here it's beautiful and sunny, and then the sun comes out, the rain comes out for a little bit, storms, and then it's back to sunny and nice, and we get pitayas and mango season and all that fun stuff. So if you hear rain in the background, try not to distract yourself. Nevertheless, I do want to wish you well and hope everybody is doing okay back in Houston, Texas, where I'm from, where this week Hurricane Beryl, I believe is the name, was striking the Gulf Coast of Texas, and millions of people apparently still without power a couple days after the impact. So just want to send prayers and well wishes to everybody out there, and I hope that people who are experiencing that will give a little bit more thought to being prepared. And I don't mean to sound callous saying that, but this is why all of us, and this kind of ties into what we're going to be talking about tonight, the need to think ahead, to be forward thinking. not just dependent on the governments, the politicians, the corporations, and trusting the plan or thinking that, voting for somebody, whether it's Donald Trump, Robert F. Kennedy, or whoever they're going to put there after Biden is going to save you. No, tonight our big story is actually not a news story. Now that I've got my YouTube channel back, especially, you may have noticed I've been slowly kind of dripping older content that I'm treading lightly because I don't want to get deleted, but it's important stuff that I really think the YouTube audience needs to see, especially the YouTube audience, because I don't mean this in a mean way, but a lot of the people on YouTube are going to be some of the more normie audience. Those of you who are watching live on BitChute or Odyssey or Rockfin, you guys have already made the move because you realize YouTube is not the place to be, that YouTube censors, etc. So you don't really look for your truth content, at least on YouTube, but perhaps you still go to YouTube for like recipe videos or just how-to videos. It's a really great resource. Unfortunately, the companies behind it, Google, they like to censor. So a lot of just mainstream normal people are on Google's YouTube, CIA Google YouTube, and they have a much better chance of coming across my work there than they do randomly stumbling across me on BitChute, Hive, Substack, Rockfin, Odyssey, all the various platforms I'm on, Telegram. This is why I'm continuing to broadcast on YouTube. But I've noticed that some of the commenters, as I've been sharing my anti-voting, apolitical, pro-liberty, pro-localization message, that I'm getting some pushback from some people who are kind of just caught in that super basic level of the left-right paradigm. Like, for example, I criticize Donald Trump, and I think the criticisms that are well worth that based on his actions, not just garbage BS about Trump having an affair with a porn star or something like that. And then I get this response, so what, you want us to vote for Biden, Derrick? And I was just like, wow, okay. I obviously, I know there's some people who are still stuck in that kind of false dichotomist type of thinking, but it's been a while since I encountered it, since I haven't really been active on YouTube. And even though I have a second YouTube channel that I created about 2 years ago, 2 years after I got deleted on the original one, I really don't put much effort into it. I'm almost deleted on that channel, in fact. So it has been interesting reconnecting with you, my friends who are over on YouTube. And again, I'm just going to encourage you for the 1,000th time, stop watching me on YouTube. I'm going to keep broadcasting here, treading lightly, because I have all of my documentaries back on YouTube and all the things I've done, and I don't want those to disappear. But as you're hopefully seeing today, for example, I uploaded my confrontation of Robert F. Kennedy Jr. about Zionism. That took place in May. So, that wasn't on YouTube till just recently. There's so many other things. I confronted John Brennan, Tulsi Gabbard, reporting I've done about Bethany Christian Services, reporting I've done on the Summit of the Future, reporting I've done on the Finders and Epstein, updates. I mean, there's just so much, and it's not all going to be on YouTube. But my point here is I recognize that being back on YouTube in the middle of the election season, it's July now, the election's less than 4 months away, that this does present an opportunity. And personally, I guess I feel an obligation, maybe a sense of duty, if you will, if I could be so lofty, to spread my message of exit and build, of empowerment. It's not a message of giving up and saying, oh, so you don't like this guy, so you must like the other guy. And it's not a message that says, guys, we should just give up altogether. Everything's screwed, right? So we're going to just go ahead and not vote at all. We're going to throw up our hands and say everything's screwed and become black-pilled. No, I'm not talking about black-pilling and just assuming that there's no solutions. In fact, the scary thing, the sad thing is that the solutions are so obvious and so right in front of our faces that it's mind-numbing that more people aren't actually focused on solutions. But here's the rub. The fact is these solutions, and the ones that I write about in my book, How to Opt Out of the Technocratic State, talking about freedom cells, talking about the exit and build concept, which you can download at theconsciousresistance.com/how-to. This is the second edition, published in 2022, the post-COVID edition, 5 chapters based on what we learned during the COVID 1984 era, and thinking about coming restrictions on your travel, digital IDs, social credit scores, and so much more. There's real solutions, and that's what I focus on. But the solutions aren't easy. They're not vote for me or vote for somebody else or donate $5 here and I'll tell you the super secret plan out of the matrix. Unfortunately, those things don't exist. And I know there's a lot of scammers out there claiming to have the super secret solution. All you got to do is draw your letters in lowercase and fill out this form and file this affidavit or whatever, or be a state national. I don't buy into all that. I personally think the answers are much, much more simpler. It's just about breaking our chains, severing our consent for these systems. And I don't mean just philosophically, but I do mean philosophically, but we're going to get more into the details today. That's why the title is exit and build, and we'll talk more about what that means, or keep playing slave games. And what I mean by slave games is voting and expecting a different result. And that includes Mr. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. But before we get into all that, guys, I did want to take a moment just to show you a clip. It's about 3.5 minutes long from an interview I did recently on the Redacted show. Last week, I showed you a clip from a couple of months ago where I was talking about the Summit of the Future, which I will be having a new article on next week. And there's so much more to say, and I hope you guys will stay tuned for that. But this most recent interview on Redacted was about my documentary series, The Pyramid of Power. Check it out at thepyramidofpower.net. 14 episodes have been released. 15 is coming very soon. We're going to do a total of 17. Honestly, lately I've been thinking, do I need an 18th episode? Obviously, this could go on forever. But this episode is focused on the false flag operations and particularly the Oklahoma City bombing. And Clayton Morris at Redacted invited me to come on the show to talk about my research. So check out this quick clip and we'll be back. We're going to talk more about exit and build and why you shouldn't vote for Donald Trump or for Biden or Robert F. Kennedy Jr. or Cornel West or Jill Stein or anybody else they throw up in your face. Check this out.
Well, what if everything you've heard about the Oklahoma City bombing has all been a lie? The narrative that the powers that be want you to believe on what unfolded on that fateful morning in Oklahoma City. Our next guest is an investigative journalist, Derrick Broze. He has a new series of documentaries called The Pyramid of Power, which is examining all of those individuals who are working behind the scenes that actually control us. We talk about the deep state, but who are these people and how exactly are they controlling us? Today, I specifically wanted to talk about a big piece of his documentary, the Oklahoma City bombing, because I think this is a narrative, this is a story that many of you probably don't know. And so we decided to welcome Derrick here on the show to have a deep dive discussion about this. Derrick, welcome into Redacted. Great to see you.
Yeah, thank you for having me back, Clayton.
Welcome. Yeah, welcome back here. And you've been doing some amazing work. Before we get into Oklahoma City specifically, can you tell our audience about this series of videos that you've been putting together, the series of documentary videos? And you can visit the pyramidofpower.net, which is the website, to see all of the videos in sequence. I have to say, I watched your episode on false flags and was just blown away by it. So how did this idea come about?
Yeah, thank you for that, Clayton. So originally the idea for this was a 2.5 hour presentation I was giving as I was doing talks across the United States back in 2018. And after doing a few dozen of those, I realized that it probably wasn't the best format for such information, that I could maybe do it better in a documentary style presentation. And so that's what I started focusing on in 2021. We began the series. It's myself. I do the research, the writing of the scripts, the narration, and I work with some really talented editors who make it come to life. And the idea was that each episode, in terms of the documentary specifically, each episode would aim to be 30 minutes or less. So we could kind of make it for the Netflix generation, make it bingeable. And if you get sucked into one, maybe you watch the whole series and by the end of it, your whole worldview is shifted. And so every episode's 30 minutes or less, at least that's what we aim for. A few have gone over, and packed with the best information that already exists. As you probably know, there's a lot of amazing documentaries and books out there that sometimes you don't have to recreate the wheel for certain topics. So I would use my own original research plus sourcing from pre-existing documentaries, pre-existing books, condensing it down to just the facts that people need to know to get them thinking about these topics. And then every episode also ends with suggested solutions for each different topic, and then recommended reading, recommended watching for those who want to go deeper into their journey. And so this latest one is chapter 14, the false flag deception. So we've been working on it now for 3 years, and there's going to be 17 episodes in total. The final episode, 17, will answer the question, who or what is at the top of the pyramid, where I will continue to interview different researchers and journalists. In this one, false flag deception, we feature some discussion with G. Edward Griffin, who's, of course, long-time researcher, been doing this since the 1950s. And I have a lot of other people, Whitney Webb and others, featured in previous episodes. And so that final episode, we're going to try to see what does everybody think is at the top, who is at the top, and of course I will offer my own view. But the whole goal is this is just meant to be a way to wake people up in another fashion, because some folks will watch 3-hour conversations, some folks will watch a 5-hour documentary or read a 500-page book, but some won't. They'd rather it be packaged in a format that's a half hour or less, and that's really what I was aiming for with this.
Well, great work on this.
All right, so that was my interview on Redacted from about a week or two ago. Again, you can find the full interview at theconsciousresistance.com. You can also find the actual episode, The False Flag Deception, at thepyramidofpower.net. Thepyramidofpower.net. That is where the actual home of the Pyramid of Power documentary series is. And I just want to make this point. I feel it's always necessary to. But the Pyramid of Power, again, we've released 14 episodes. I've written and recorded the narration for the 15th one called The Pedo Class. And my editor's working on that right now. And that is a completely crowdfunded operation. I've worked with several editors on this. They've been paid completely through crowdfunding. I haven't been paid at all yet. I'm hoping in the long term this pays off, but more importantly, it's just a big project that I believe in. And I just want to say thank you to everybody out there who has donated over the years when we first started this project in 2021, because you're the ones who make it completely possible for me to spread this information and then to get the opportunity to go on these bigger platforms to spread my message. Because what I hope most is not just to take my journalism to these bigger platforms, but to also take the solutions. And that's what we're going to focus on right now. We're going to talk some solutions. I'm going to pull up the consciousresistance.com. Again, this is our homepage. This is our website where we've been, broadcasting for more than a decade. And if you want to find anything about what I do, this is always the best place, theconsciousresistance.com. And I'm going to show you just a couple of places where you can learn more about Exit and Build. Again, theconsciousresistance.com. Check it out. Find all our latest content, articles, interviews, podcasts, including there's the interview on the left side with Clayton discussing the Oklahoma City bombing. So check that one out. But if you go down, you scroll down here you'll see on the right-hand side, you see what is the conscious resistance, investigation, documentaries, books, the 3 A's of agorism. I encourage you to check out all of that, specifically the 3 A's of agorism, because that's really the inspiration for what I call Exit and Build. And you can go check out presentations. And again, this is a place I encourage everybody who's on YouTube and who's missed the last 4 years of my content. I put out a lot of work. And if I had to narrow it down, I would say, yes, my journalism is important, but I would also say more important is the solutions that I present in my various talks over the years. And the last few years have been very focused on this Exit and Build message. You can see my talk in late May, just a couple of months ago, at the Exit and Build Land Summit in Texas. That's right, Exit and Build, from my book, this idea of exiting from slavery systems and building or supporting those who are building new ones instead of trying to change the old and trying to quote unquote reform things. That phrase, that idea has caught on with so many people during COVID 1984, particularly within the Freedom Cell Network, that John Bush ended up starting his own summit, his own conference in Central Texas called the Exit and Build Land Summit. And that's what that's all about. And I spoke there this year. I gave a talk called Countering Agenda 2030 by Living a Holistic Exit and Build Lifestyle. I encourage you to check that talk out. I went to Envision Festival in Costa Rica a couple months ago, and I gave a talk called Navigating the Future of AI, Digital IDs, and Digital Money. I encourage you to check that out. This year at the Greater Reset in January here in Mexico, I gave a talk called What Won't You Do to Advance Liberty, just going through the myriad of examples of things that I've done in my particular work to try to spread awareness and solutions and encouraging people to step up to the plate and take some action in their own ways. You can also go back here and look at my talk From AI and Transhumanism to Being Human. You go back to Monerotopia, How to Opt Out of the Technocratic State from 2023, Exit the Slavery Systems, Build the Parallel Society, Exit and Build, The Power of Being Outside the System, Opting Out of Pandemics, Climate Lockdowns, and Smart Cities. That's from Next Steps in 2023. Again, you can see my point here. I've got dozens and dozens of presentations from... Whoa, holy crap. Did you guys hear that? That was so loud. You probably heard that. I've got dozens and dozens of presentations throughout the years, but particularly from these last couple years that really emphasize the Exit and Build message. So I would encourage you to go check that out. Again, the Conscious Resistance, look at the presentations category, and you can find more about that. So yes, I am okay. Thank you for that. As I mentioned earlier, there's a thunderstorm going on here in Morelia. It's rainy season, so we get these epic storms throughout the day, and then it's beautiful in the rain. The sun comes out. So let's focus on this for the next 20 minutes or so before I update you. I do have some news we're going to get into. We're going to talk about Klaus Schwab in a little bit, the potential that Klaus Schwab is being thrown to the wolves, and what does it really mean, Basil? And we're also going to talk about an update on my investigation into Bethany Christian Services, the adoption agency, which claims to be Christian. And again, if you've been only watching on YouTube, you've missed a lot of this. This is really important work. So we'll talk about that. And I think, and then we'll maybe talk a little bit about Israel as well. And as usual, we're going to end with a music video. We're going to talk about one of my books on my shelf tonight as well. So we got another good show for tonight. So thank you guys very much for being here with us. So exit and build, the idea is essentially exiting from systems that do not align with your values. I call them slavery systems. So let's take some examples. I would say that most of us, whether we pay them or not, do not agree with the involuntary taxation system, the system that says if you don't pay the government's ransom once a year, then they're going to come put you in a cage or take away your property or call you a bad person and things like that. If you don't agree with that system, you have a couple of options. You can begrudgingly participate and just complain and make memes and say, the only thing consistent in life is death and taxes, and here you go, government, here's my money. You can I guess you can excitedly pay your taxes. You can accept that this is the case. Some people embrace them because they think this is the cost of a civilized society. I'm, on the other hand, think that if the quote unquote cost of being in a quote unquote civilized society is to extort people at the threat of violence, which is what involuntary taxation is, then I don't think it's very civil, but that's a whole nother discussion. So you can either just happily accept that you're being taxed. You can begrudgingly accept that you're being taxed. You can do some research and dive into the various facts around the IRS. And then maybe you come to find out that you don't believe that it's constitutional, that you actually are being taxed on your wages. And then you can choose to use that information to teach other people, as some people do. Of course, some of those people often end up going to prison. You can also try to adapt to the situation and recognize that we're living in an imperfect world, that this is a system that does not align with your values, talking about involuntary taxation. And you can find ways to kind of chip away at the machine and say, okay, well, I'm going to avoid taxes in this way. I'm going to maybe play a little numbers game here. And, if you look up the war tax resistance movement, they're a historical movement in the United States. And I'm sure there's groups around the world who have never been tried, never got in trouble, as far as I know, in terms of being found guilty for not paying taxes. And they have a very specific strategy. It's not about funny filing affidavits and letters with lower cases or any of that kind of stuff or declaring yourself sovereign. They literally as from what I remember, and it's been a little while since I researched them, but they were one of the first groups I ever learned about back in 2011 when I first started researching resisting taxation, because again, I came to a point where I realized this system does not align with my values. I can either continue to participate, and at this time I was like 26, 27. I was really just kind of, and I was just getting out of prison. So I was really rethinking my whole life and what I was willing to support and what I wasn't willing to support. And, interestingly, I got to the point where I just decided I can't do this anymore. I have to figure out a way around this. And so I started to research tax resistance, and I got to the war tax resistance movement. And they calculate each individual's alleged money they owe. This is what the government claims you owe them, which is total bullshit anyways. But let's say the government claimed you owe them $10,000 that year. If you were part of this war tax resistance movement, they have like a way to go about it where they will take that money then and then go donate it to a specific organization that they believe in, and file the records and send them to the government and basically say, hey, this is what I did with my my quote unquote taxes that I owe you. I donated it to Veterans Against the War or something like that, right? So they find like a organization that fits their beliefs, and they put the money towards that. So technically, money's still coming out of their pocket, but instead of it going to the war machine in the United States and sending billions of dollars to bombs in Israel or bombing other people in brown countries that Americans will never visit, the money goes towards something that they're comfortable with. And as far as I know, and again, like I said, it's been years, they have been successful in using that tactic. Okay, that was a long-winded story, but my point here is this is one of the many ideas you could take when you come to a situation where you recognize you are dealing with systems, people, individuals, businesses that do not align with your values. Involuntary taxation. I don't like that. Even if when I pay my taxes, that money might go to fund abortion programs, somebody who's pro-life might say. Or let's say a vegan might say, I don't like that when I pay taxes, my money goes to subsidies for factory farms that abuse animals. Or maybe a non-smoker might say, when I pay taxes through this involuntary extortion, my money goes towards tobacco subsidies and I don't even smoke, and on and on and on. We could probably, anti-war activists are paying for war because taxes go to subsidize the war, right? It's an immoral situation. You can either accept it happily or begrudgingly, or you can take action. And this is where exit and build comes from. This is the idea then. You're recognizing this system does not align with my values, and I'm not going to continue to support it. I'm going to exit from it. I'm going to take away my moral, my emotional, maybe my spiritual support for the situation. And I can't stop paying taxes today. And I know I'm starting with a very controversial example, which has made some people the target of the IRS. But it's an important one because the involuntary taxation is part of funding the whole damn scheme. So you could come to this conclusion where you realize, like, it's immoral. I don't know what I'm going to do, but by next year's tax season, I'm not paying. I'm figuring out a way out. I'm going to start shuffling some things around my business. Obviously, if you got a huge corporate enterprise and you're making millions and hundreds of millions of dollars a year, this is a very difficult thing to do. But let's say you're a local entrepreneur or you're an individual with a small family business. It is also difficult for people who already have the money stolen out of their checks through direct deposit and things like that if you're working for bigger companies. I recognize that. Again, it's up to you. I can't tell you what to do. But if you recognize that, hey, I'm dealing with immoral slavery systems, I have to make a choice. I can't tell you what that choice is. For me, I severed my relationship with certain U.S. government agencies in 2011. I haven't used a bank account since 2008. I choose not to have a driver's license. I do have a passport to get around internationally. I don't have a cell phone myself. I do have a laptop. I've made certain decisions in my life, and I've also, for example, made the decision that in the next couple of years, once facial recognition becomes mandatory to fly in the United States or North America, I'm no longer going to fly. Right now, they're testing it out. I have the option to opt out, and I do every time. By the way, just FYI, if you're flying internationally, they're starting to test it at the airports. They're going to tell you to step up to this little tablet and just look at it, and before you know it, they take a picture of your face. So if you see that happening, step back and just hand them your passport or your tickets and say no thanks. You still have that option, but they're claiming by 2026, 2028, we won't have that option. I'm not saying let's give up and not push back, but you also need to be prepared for the potential that does become reality. And then you have to start thinking ahead and saying, okay, if that's going to become a reality, and let's say, for example, your income is dependent on traveling, but you also care about your privacy and you don't want the government to have your face print or any of your information any more than they already do, right? You want to resist and push back. And you got a couple of years. So that gives you time to say, all right, right now, my check and feeding my family is totally dependent on the job that requires me to travel. And they're talking about facial recognition. That's my red line in the sand. I'm not willing to do that. Okay, then you need to come up with a plan. And this is what my book talks about, like creating to-do lists and helping yourself go from saying you got credit card debt and student loan debt and you're totally plugged into the matrix. You got a 401k and all this stuff, direct deposit and automated bills. And you have to untangle those things so that you can transition to, say, maybe a credit union, a local smaller bank, or maybe getting into private cryptos like Monero, which are the only crypto I think at the moment worth still pursuing, or just putting your money under the freaking mattress or in a safe at home. Trust me, it's better off there than it is being in the banks, where the same people who robbed the American people and the people of the world really in 2008 and for the last hundreds of years, why are we using their banks? If you got a freaking Chase Bank, you're supporting the company that helped Jeffrey Epstein funnel money related to his trafficking of children, of young girls. Why would you want to support that? So exit and build is about taking a moral stance and saying these particular systems, and I'm going to focus on 5 of them in just a moment, do not align with my values. And since I recognize I would like to be not only a moral person, but I also want to, I want to live in line with my values. I want to set an example for my children, for the coming generations. I don't want to just tell them, you know what, kids, life is hard and we have to compromise. So we have to work with evil people and accept evil systems. How about no? How about we actually live in line with our values and be an example for the coming 7 generations? That takes forward thinking. It takes time. It takes planning. It takes action. And it takes what I call a holistic self-assessment, which is coincidentally one of my other books that you can download, The Holistic Self-Assessment. And by the way, I will be going through some of these comments here in just a couple moments. The Holistic Self-Assessment, though, you can download it for free at theconsciousresistance.com. It's just a book that asks everybody to start looking at the various pieces of your life, not only to get mentally, physically, spiritually right, which is part of it, but in this case, to start thinking about the systems you want to exit and build from. What I describe in my book, How to Opt Out of the Technocratic State, is how we saw during COVID-1984 that the attack vectors they came after the kids, the next generation, propagandizing that, trying to control them and influence them. They came after your money in different ways. We saw Of course, the big talk about CBDCs, which is still ongoing. Food, we saw people, not only the attacks of the food supply, lots of different shady things happening there, and shipping containers and all that sort of stuff, shipping delays, but the ability to keep people out of the grocery store if they didn't have this thing or that thing, or they didn't have this proper experimental treatment. So the kids, the money, the food, spiritually as well, they wanted to isolate us and separate us from each other. That was an attack, a psychic attack, a mental attack. And then the other one would be digital technology itself. And that is, of course, the push towards digital identities, towards digital currencies, CBDCs, but it's more like the digital identity side. And that also includes social credit scores. And so we need to see, if we've seen their deck of cards and we've seen their attacks, and things are kind of calm right now, but don't forget it's also the year where there's more elections going on in the entire world than there ever have been in history, apparently, but particularly in the United States, where we know election years are a great time to divide people and to get people believing in the old system again, right? Because think about this. Let me just take a sidebar for a moment. How many people woke up the last 4 years and saw people like Robert F. Kennedy Jr., myself, Whitney Webb, Ryan the Last American Vagabond, James Corbett, and so many other people who've been at this for a long time, warning and telling people from the beginning, guys, this doesn't smell right. Because if you remember my reporting, which you can find on my website and even on my old YouTube channel, some of the videos are still there. I started reporting on COVID-19 84 in January 2020, and right away knew something wasn't right. You can go back and see the records all there. And so many people have woken up, though. It was a good thing. It's been like this big boon. But at the same time, now those people are being told, look, if you want to fix the problems of the last 4 years, just vote for Trump. He'll stop and make sure the globalists never do this. Or, if you don't like him, you don't like Biden, well, here's your third flavor of ice cream, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. And he's, of course, the health freedom warrior who's ready to set everything right. He's saying all this stuff about the CIA, and he comes from this American dynasty. He's going to be the one to do it. He unites old liberals who have this thing for the Kennedys, and then he unites the younger people who maybe just like him because of some of the things he said about COVID. Of course, pay no attention to the fact that all three of those characters are hardcore Zionists. That's a conversation for another day. But it brings more people back into the system. And I feel like I have only been around doing this work for 14 years, but that's 3-4 elections now. That was Trump, Obama's second election. It was Trump. That was 2020. And then I was paying attention before, but I wasn't awake during the Bush years. But I've seen enough of these elections now and been paying attention long enough to know that it seems like people wake up, like post-Bush, or during Bush years, there was big marches against the war, anti-war, surveillance, torture is wrong. And then this figure came in. He walked on stage. He was a young, black constitutional attorney who has said all the right things, and he's going to go after the Bush people. He's going to make sure that everybody's held accountable. Then he gets in office. Whoops, never mind. We're not going to look backwards. We need to look forward. And then what does he do? He expands all those same powers. He indoctrinates or codifies indefinite detention of American citizens via the NDA 2012. He became the drone king by expanding the drone program. And then what happens? Along comes a character named Donald Trump who promises he's going to fix things. And all those people who may have fell for Obama, and I voted for him in 2008, but I'm not again. I voted for him both times, but no more. I can't believe I fell for that. Maybe the right wing's the answer. And here comes this guy, a total outsider, never before been in politics, so we can trust him, right? Donald Trump, and he somehow wins. The media couldn't possibly have imagined that. There's no possibility that this whole thing is an engineered script designed to make you believe that this guy's a hero. No. Pay no attention to that. Everything you see on CNN, it's all real. None of us had any idea he was going to win. How could that ever happen, right? Then this narrative comes in, and the freedom people think they won. And then as Trump starts doing the same thing, continues some of the same policies, he actually became the drone emperor. He went above and beyond what Obama did and dropped more bombs than Obama, and actually also killed an American citizen, Anwar al-Awlaki's daughter or son. He continued the bombing that Obama started. Not to mention COVID-19, the largest deficit in any president, some of the biggest socialization programs under the CARES Act, and of course, Operation Warp Speed, Big Daddy who loves his injections still. And the narrative is like, we need somebody to save us from this. And now people have got to the point where they realize the mainstream's garbage. As I said last week, I think they're collapsing the mainstream by design in order to prop up the fake mainstream alternative media, who then sort of direct that energy into Donald Trump as the hero against the deep state, and for those who you can't quite get, who don't like Biden and don't like Trump, we got a path for them too. We'll corral them into this RFK the third. Maybe will he, won't he come behind victory? Guys, they've been studying human psychology for generations. They know how to manipulate us and to drive us this way and that way. And in fact, I made a post about this on my social media a couple of days ago, including on my YouTube page. I'll just read it here because it's really pertinent right now, discussing fifth generation warfare. So this is what I wrote. I feel that the vast majority of humanity, including the vast majority of truthers, freedom lovers, libertarians, conspiracy realists, etc., are blind to the danger of the concept of fifth generation warfare. Social media is the battlefield, and truth has been sacrificed at the altar of technocracy, the techno-tyranny takeover of our lives. You cannot blindly trust what you read and see online, especially from, quote, independent media, or as David Icke and others are now calling it, and I think is a great term, mainstream alternative media talking heads. They will tell you what you want to hear, including that Trump did nothing wrong, Trump's a good guy, or Trump's a bad guy. They will feed into, we're dealing with intelligence agencies who have got their fingers into every social media network and the internet itself. And you better believe that there are some false heroes out there pretending to be independent media. We know about this from the Snowden documents back 10 years ago, that they were creating fake YouTube accounts, fake Twitter accounts, fake influencers to push and guide narratives. They will tell you what you want to hear, confirm your biases and your fears, only to later misdirect you to make you more easily manipulated. And if you can't grasp this, you are going to be taken advantage of. I make no claims of authority over deciding who or what is using fifth generation warfare, but I know we are witnessing live narrative shaping around elections, pandemics, weather events, economic calamities, and other major events. And it also happens every day, not just the big events. They're constantly trying to shape narratives for us. You must cling to your critical thinking and reason, and even that can be weaponized against you. And here's one final point on this, and we're going to talk more about exit and build. This is more specifically about the principle side of things, because I see so many people starting to support Trump who think that, oh, it's the lesser of two evils. And again, like I was saying a moment ago, elections are a great time to divide people, to get people to sell out their principles. In between elections, we're like, yes, freedom, we want freedom, and screw the government. We know that they killed Kennedy's uncle and his dad. We know that the system's corrupt. Jeffrey Epstein, blackmail, Israel, Mossad. Wait, election comes up. Yeah, voting's going to fix it. I mean, it's just the most asinine thing I've ever seen. This is why having principles matters. Because if I know, for example, that it is wrong, immoral, impractical, etc., to use force, fraud, violence, or coercion on another human being, and I also recognize that it's wrong to do such a thing, even if it comes from a government or a government official. And what I mean by that is, like with the taxation example we were going over, if I steal from your pocket and tell you that it's going to do something good, you would say, okay, maybe so, but still, you're stealing from me, fuck off. But if somebody comes along and says, hey, I'm from the IRS, I'm going to take out of your pocket every month to go towards building roads or doing stuff we promise you it's good, we call it taxation. No, it's still an immoral act, right? It's immoral if an individual commits force, fraud, violence, or coercion on another individual, and it's immoral if that individual happens to be working from the government. It still makes it immoral. And if you know that, you will see through all BS attempts to manipulate you into accepting or justifying the use of violence, regardless of who's doing it. So the answer is to stick to the principles of liberty, to learn more about exit and build, and to stop focusing on these fake-ass solutions, which are politicians. I know this is a hard one for many of you because I don't claim to have all the answers. I'm not claiming the solution that I'm promoting is going to work 100% or that it's going to work with everybody. But I do know that trying the same thing over and over and again, just voting, just waiting 2 more years and 4 more years for somebody to come along and give us a little bit more hopium, it's not going to fix it, guys. And at the very least, this is my question, my challenge to you is to, if you're going to vote in the election, okay, that's in November. More than likely, you've probably already made your mind up if you're a voter. If not, good. Spend some time figuring that out. At least be a quote unquote educated voter. But guess what? It is July. Depending on your season right now, you got July, August, September, October. You have 3.5 months, at least 3 months. Let's say 3 full months. You could plant some starter plants And those will be much more productive over the next couple of months. You could start a little mini garden in your house, your backyard. You could join a community garden. You could choose to go to abovephone.com and get an Above phone and learn how to use that, or get an Above book, or de-Google your own phone, or de-Google your own computer. You could do Linux. You could learn about permaculture, watching free documentaries that are on the internet. You could get together with a local group of people using freedomcells.org to connect and find people in your area, and then say, hey, let's focus on what are our goals. Hey, we're really concerned about food security, and we want to learn more about how to use cryptocurrency privacy, because despite what some misinformed people think, crypto is not controlled. It's a monolithic thing. Bitcoin has become controlled, but that's not all that there is. This is why Monero XMR still exists, and this is why the government, as I reported a couple months ago, but you probably missed if you're watching on YouTube, is clamping down with the arrest of Roger Ver, with arresting the guys from the Samurai Wallet, Tornado Cash. They're going after the projects that can help people get out of the banking system. But the point is, you could learn about all of these different alternatives and everything I talk about in my book, and you could do that for the next 3 months and still go vote. And you would have done much more for yourself than if you do nothing but just slave away and just keep listening to podcasts telling you how fucked up the world is and just go vote, or just do nothing. Back to the conversation about being black-pilled. I asked earlier to a gentleman who was commenting, saying that he's like, I'm not going to lie. Let me see. Where is you at, brother? No, I got to admit, I'm black-pilled. The answer is simple, but waking up people to see is damn hard. And I asked, what specifically makes you feel black-pilled? And for those who aren't familiar with this term, it's a term just like red pill, from the Matrix. It's like, you want to take the blue pill, the red pill. Red pill originally meant being awake, and then now people use red pill to more mean like manosphere type stuff and whatever. That's got its whole issue. And then there's the term white pill, which is kind of like where you're maybe overly optimistic, or you think like, yeah, everything's good. Like humanity, we're going to overcome this. We're going to make it through this. And there's nothing that can deter you from that view. And then a black pill is more like you just really think things are screwed. And so when I talk about any of these solutions, for example, someone might say, oh yeah, Derrick, go buy your land, go build your community, start growing your own food. What do you think? They're just going to let you grow your own food? Have you ever heard of Waco? They're going to come bomb you and kill you, and all of these things, which could happen, I guess, in some reality. But what is the choice then? To act to not act because I'm afraid that one day in the future, some bad people might come after me and the people I care about? At least if that was to happen, I can say, hey, you know what? I died doing what I love, focusing on gaining skills, building on land, living in a way that is actually in balance with the planet, with the people, with the animals, with people that I care about, hosting events, promoting the ideas of liberty. And then, if one day some bad people come kill me, I think I probably live pretty good, right? I'd rather do that than sit still and do nothing and just complain on the internet while I watch the world get more fucked up, which is what it seems like lots of you seem to be comfortable just doing that. Is that really enough? It doesn't feel like it's enough for me. Rugg says, what made me feel black-pilled originally was finding out that 90% of the supposed truth/freedom movement are agents, grifters, shills, masons, scum. Okay. I'm talking about fifth generation warfare, and I'm talking about how we have to be skeptical of the things that are being put in front of us. That is true. And that's 100%, be skeptical, especially at these higher levels. I'll just be real. I'm getting on bigger podcasts, and I have plans to keep going up bigger, including connecting with people that I'm not quite sure I can trust. And the way I learn to trust people, though, is usually I say, can I interview you? And I kind of get a feeling for them. And also, I don't have to trust somebody to collaborate with them on something that is a positive project. Now, if I find out things about people that are suspicious, then of course I'll put my distance between them. But I don't really like this mentality of assuming, for one, Ruggs, how do you even quantify that? The truth freedom movement is worldwide. I doubt even half of the movement that is around the world, because most of it is not even in English. We make this assumption that the truth movement is only in English-speaking countries like Western Europe, Australia, the United States, Canada, etc. My friends, that's not true. There's a lot of truth content in Spanish, Dutch, German, etc. And those have different communities and activists and influencers that we might not even know about, but they're big in their country. So for one, you don't even know who 90% of the movement. So let's put that aside. But even if you did, have you met every single one of them? Have you watched all their content? I get the general assessment of what you're saying, though. You're saying there's a lot of people out there that we can't trust. But also spending your days just going around, it's a shill, it's a grifter, it's a mason, it's a scum, whatever. Like, I get called Freemason because I call my music 33, and people make all kinds of assumptions, and they're free to do that. But you can also judge me by my actions. You can judge me by the documentaries I've done, by the interviews I do, by the reports I do. And you can say, yeah, but Derrick, you're the 5th generation warfare you're warning us about. This is 4D chess designed to get me to follow you and believe. Okay, whatever. That's my point, is you can put your head down the rabbit hole so far, you come out your own ass, and you don't even know what's up and what's down. So don't get sucked into pointing fingers at every direction. Trust yourself. Get a couple of sources of people that you might like, and that's it. But the point is, focus on solutions. Focus on real world solutions, getting out of the banking system, getting off big tech as much as possible. For example, you can go to nomooregoogle.com right now. You can go to privacytools.io, and both of those websites are filled with great resources. You can go to takebackourtech.org. Another great resource. And these have guides and alternatives. For example, I don't use Google Docs. I don't use Google for these different things. And it really sucks when I get invited to do interviews and somebody sends me a Google Meet link or a Zoom link or some Microsoft product. I really hate it, and I'm going to get more strict about it in the future. I use things like Jitsi and CryptPad as alternatives, where I can do everything that you can do with Google and Microsoft, but without the tracking, with more privacy. And my point is, we have alternatives in each of these areas, but are you willing to do them? Are you willing to learn a new tool? Are you willing to change your operating system? Are you willing to go out and meet new people? The comment earlier saying that waking up people to see is damn hard, but that's kind of the problem, my friend, is that you don't need to wake up people. I've chosen to do this because as a journalist, and I think it is a good thing for activists to go out there and pass out flyers and try to talk people and keep growing the movement. But at the same time, the things that have brought me the most success have just been leading by example. If you're in an area and you don't know other people, yes, you could print out flyers and say, say you're in Austin, you say Austin Freedom Group or whatever you want to call it, Freedom Cell, Freedom Circle, or just, hey, I'm looking for like-minded people. You can go to the freedomcells.org website. You can put yourself on the map. You can search the maps to find people within your area. You can create a cell in your area. New people will come find you. And it might start small with just one person, but before you know it, you're going to find another like-minded person. You get together, and instead of just commiserating and watching YouTube videos and complaining about how fucked up the world is, which is what a lot of truth freedom groups do, you could start setting goals and say, all right, look, both of us know things are fucked up. Let's, and this is the mantra of the Freedom Cell Network, assume everyone knows the problems, focus on the solutions. You could say, look, we both know things are bad, but what can we do in the next year? Okay, look, you got a house, I got a house. Do you have a backyard? Yeah, I got a backyard. Okay, well, maybe we start a little community garden between the two of us. Let's put a couple hours in on the weekend and start building a garden there. And then we can promote that on the Freedom Cells website. We can put up flyers in our local coffee shops and meetup spots. And before you know it, you might get a third or a fourth person that shows up and they're interested, and you learn that they have skills that you didn't have. So you start learning from each other and you start building this resiliency. Community is the key, my friends. They are working night and day. World Economic Forum, United Nations, Summit of the Future, coming up in New York City, September 21st to the 23rd, and the Great Reset and the Fourth Industrial Revolution. How hard are you working? Are you doing anything? Are you just complaining, watching freaking YouTube videos from influencers and channels that just want to keep shoving negative news down your head and never offer you a solution, my friends? I'm trying to crack through that and say, hey guys, there are some fucking solutions. It's going to involve getting up off your ass though and doing something. I'm sorry, voting isn't going to fix it. I make no apologies about that. The reality is that voting won't fix it. If you, again, like I said earlier, vote if you want, and then do something at the same time. Spend the next couple months learning about permaculture. Imagine if you just put in 1 hour a week. I get it that some of you are so stressed out. You're probably working 60 to 70 hours a week. You got 3 kids. You're trying to go to school. You're in debt. I get that life is hard. I get that. And also, we are the ones who have to do something about this. If you're having this conversation, we're listening to each other, we're talking to each other. If you've come this far, I'm sorry, but nobody else is coming to save us. There's no white horse, nobody riding in to save the day. There's no QAnon, there's no garbage bullshit like that. There's no white hats. It's us. We are the real white hats. We have to step up. And the coming generations, the yet to be born children, the 7 generations and beyond are 100% depending on us to wake up. We know that technocracy is here. We know that they're working on digital IDs, that they're working on digital currencies, CBDCs, that they're working on limiting freedom of speech, that they're trying to take down videos like this. And we're either going to move and act and exit from these slavery systems and build new ones to compete with them directly in parallel, not to reform the old dying systems, which were never worth saving in the first place because they're meant to be broken, but building new ones. And those young ones who are coming after us, your children and your children's children and great-grandchildren and beyond, and the ones that you will never meet because you will pass from this earth before they're even a seed in their parents, they are waiting for us. They are dependent on us. The world that they will be born into is going to be shaped by the actions that we take or we do not take. And that's just the reality, my friends. We're going to talk more about exit and build in just a moment. Thank you guys for listening. This is the Conscious Resistance Live, episode 134. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back.
Are you using your phone, or is it using you? Rise above mass surveillance and discover a phone that protects your privacy and communications.
Above Phone does everything your old phone does, without tracking you, while giving you complete control over your phone and apps. We are better than big tech. It works with any cell service. No forced logins. No advertising or tracking. Download apps privately. Control your phone and its apps with secure hardware. Introducing Above Suite. Protects your internet traffic. Private email on any device. Video call with friends privately. Encrypted chat, calls, and internet phone. Protect your searches and get results. Don't worry if you're new. Every phone includes a free 45-minute live call. You also get free email and chat support, free guides and video courses. We can take back our technology. We're here to help with tools and education. You have the power.
Rise above with Above Phone. AbovePhone.com.
Back to the Conscious Resistance Live, episode 134. Again, AbovePhone.com. I do have a link on the ConsciousResistance.com if you want to go there and get extra discount. Actually, let me go ahead and just pull that up for you guys. Might as well just show it to you while we're talking about, because the companies and the people that I support doing things like that, like with Above Phone, are people who are in line with my message. So I'm not just going to tell you guys, hey, go support this company if I don't know that it's actually in line with what I'm trying to promote to you guys. And what I'm trying to talk about is, like, how do we take our lives back into our hands? How do we build that better world that we all know is necessary and is possible? Well, I work with companies who I think are actually doing solutions. Hakeem, who is the founder of the Above Phone, the Above Suite. Let me see if this opened up here. He is a man of action. And so he created this company. They've launched these different tools. And this is great for me because it gives me an opportunity to then come to you guys and say, hey, I'm not a technologist. I can't build the tech tools, but here's Hakeem and his company who are willing to offer these services. And here we go. So I have an exclusive deal. If you go to abovephone.com/dbroze, as in Derrick, DBROZE. So abovephone.com/dbroze, you get $50 off your order there. And of course, obviously, you'll be supporting me as well in my efforts there. These are de-Googled phones. You got a variety of models, a variety of services. They have their own operating system. Each phone is loaded with decentralized open source alternatives to everything you do. YouTube, listening to podcasts, camera, etc., maps. It just takes a little bit of effort to learn an alternative. And again, like I was saying before we took that quick break, if you're not willing to do anything to make your own effort, then do you really want to be free? And just like we got here from David Freeman, just make your own de-Googled phone. It's easy to do. I agree. It is easy to do if you want to take that time, but most people don't want to take that time. They don't want to learn how to do that. And they don't want to go out and find all these various different tools out there to load on their phone. So Above Phone does that for you, making it much easier. And again, Ruggs, bro, I think you probably are black-pilled with this silliness. LOL, typical pyramid symbol. Again, this is just like with the 33 thing. Not everybody using a pyramid or using a certain number is quote unquote part of the plan, or is a shill, or is a grifter. You have to understand that the spiritual technology, it specifically relates to the intention of the user. So this is why we can take a pyramid and invert it and mean one thing, or the Nazis can take the swastika, a symbol of peace, and invert it and it can mean another thing. It's about the symbol, the use, and the attention of the holder. That doesn't mean that the Freemasons have a monopoly on certain numbers or certain symbols. In fact, that's such a disempowering message to be like, oh, be afraid, there's a triangle over here, oh, there's a number over here, and act as if they own that. I mean, I just think that's such a silly, asinine cop-out that I see a lot in the liberty movement. We'll get to a couple comments before we continue here. And then from Daniel, if we only had a technocracy, that would be great compared to the psychos that currently rule us. For the record, technocracy means rule by science, not tech companies. I agree. Technocracy is specifically a rule by experts, technological experts. So it's a scientific dictatorship, but it's also technological experts. In our day and age, those would be the big tech companies who work directly with the state. Now, of course, the World Economic Forum side of it is the public-private partnership, which some people would call fascism or corporatism. That's really what we're fighting here. Big tech companies that are in bed with the government, the state, intelligence networks behind it, and there's, of course, more to that. But the basic idea is that the individuals are too dumb to make their own decisions. So even though we all know democracy, voting, et cetera, isn't the best we can do, I think there's more freedom to be had. Even in that system, you get to go play the game and vote and pretend like you have a choice. In a technocracy, it basically says the voters' decisions don't matter. Politicians are too dumb to know what's right. People are too dumb. We need the business class gone as well. We need the scientific, technological elite to rule things and to make their decisions. And we got, in a bunch of my videos, I use all that Illuminati symbolism for mockery. Okay, so we got another one here. I did want to share one positive comment. Carolyn says, I tend to agree. We have been listening to the same people now for 4 years. I've also said no one is coming to save us. We have to save ourselves. Absolutely. And there was a positive comment up here about somebody saying that they've already been exiting the building. They've already taken steps to help themselves and their family. Right here, Carlo Marlowe. I exited and built an off-grid life on a mountain in Vermont. I only need $400 a month for all my expenses. It wasn't that hard. If you know the pitfalls to avoid. So I think that's that. Thank you for sharing that. These are the kind of real world answers that people need. No, it's not necessarily easy for everybody, but the point is, and just to wrap up the exit and build conversation here before we move on to some other stories, exiting and building. I started with the topic of taxation. You could also talk about exiting and building from big tech, right? So one example would be get a de-Googled phone, get on Linux, et cetera, like that. Exiting and building from the propaganda systems that is public education. So maybe you start homeschooling your kids. Maybe you work with a local group of parents and y'all start your own homeschooling pod. And maybe y'all pool your resources to hire a tutor to teach your kids in a way that you think is most valuable to your goals, right? That's exiting and building as well. But for many of us, exiting and building is also about exiting and building in terms of physical location. So for example, I exited and builded, and it kind of sounds funny, but I exited from Texas, even though I love Texas and I still do go and visit. When the COVID insanity started in March 2020, some of you may remember, I crossed the border the first week and a half of March, right before they announced they were shutting down the border. Miriam and I came down to Mexico, and I ended up where I am right now in Morelia, Mexico, in central Mexico. And this ended up being where we've got our land and where we hold the Greater Reset, the People's Reset now in January. And it worked out for me. But that choice was made because they started talking about restricting interstate travel. And to me, even if the cage is the size of Texas, it's still a cage, right? That's always been a red line in the sand for me. Talk about restricting travel, restricting freedom of movement. And like I said earlier with the airports and facial recognition, see, because I've taken the time to write down my lines in the sand and I don't budge on them. And if you don't even know that, if you don't know like, well, what is that red line? Guess what? You're going to keep getting ran over. You're going to keep being a doormat, because you don't know where your principles are. You don't know where your line is. That's one big step to start taking. How much of this are you willing to take? Are you going to accept facial recognition if it means that you that's what's required to continue to use your bank account? Are you going to take the voluntary step right now, at least, of allowing your insurance company to use OnStar to track your every movement in the promise of getting better insurance rates? These things are happening, right? So they're going to try to both buy us off, like we saw during COVID, like, here, get a donut after you take the shot, get a free stripper, this and that. So they're going to try to bribe people. It's also going to be done through entertainment. Here's some movie passes if you do the thing we want you to do. But it's also going to be just through this sort of reward system. Again, like with the insurance companies, hey, give us access to your phone, give us access to your car and everywhere you go, and we'll give you discounts and, you know, lower rates and stuff like that. So they're going to sell this technocratic slave system to people through entertainment, through like benefits, you know, this carrot thing. And eventually, as we saw with COVID, there'll be a stick. Oh, you don't want to take it? Now you're going to get penalized, right? So this is why it's so important for those of us who are thinking ahead to start focusing on exiting and building. Because if we don't now, my friends, it's going to be only even more difficult in the future. As I told you, I don't have relationships with certain US government agencies. I just live my life freely. I'm an independent journalist. I get paid for writing articles. I allowed my lifestyle and the fact that I can work online to give me the freedom of movement to kind of navigate these systems in a way that I think has allowed me to see a little bit further of, you know, what's potentially possible. Now, if you're a person who is living 100% like stuck at a job, 50, 60 hours a week, 401k in debt, I know that this might sound really far away, but start small. Start on the little things that you can do in your life. Again, I encourage you to download my book. I'm not trying to sell you the book. Buy it if you want, but you can download it for free at theconsciousresistance.com/how-to. I try to get as specific with guides and steps on doing this. So exit and build is about getting out of systems that don't align with your values, but it also might be about moving. Like I was saying, when we traveled around the United States in 2021, I did the activation tour. Miriam and I traveled for 60 days visiting communities all across the US during the midst of the COVID insanity. And we met people who said, I felt so alone. I felt so isolated. And then I went on freedomcells.org and I found there was other people. We started growing food together. We started organizing and they created community. And that's what's going to be necessary to thrive into the future. We have to create these parallel, alternative, counter-economic systems. Now, some people, though, they were in an area where they said, I had nobody. Everybody in my area was totally COVID crazy. I had no friends. So I went on the Freedom Cell Network and I started searching, what does it look like the next state over or a couple of cities over? And I found there was a group, you know, just a couple hours away from me. So I decided to move my whole life and, go live in a different area where a lot of people left California and New York and came to Texas. A lot of people came from Canada, the UK and Australia who couldn't get out anywhere else and came to Mexico because it was one of the only places in the world, I think one of two places that didn't require shots or quarantines or anything like that. That is also exiting and building. When you're looking at your current living situation and maybe you're looking around and realizing the place that I'm living is not very conducive to long-term liberty for myself and my family. So I think I'm going to consider making a move, right? So I think that's the big thing here is we really have to think about what comes in the long-term future. And I know right now things have quote unquote calmed down in this new normal, but we should not allow ourselves to think that these crazy psychopaths don't have other things up their sleeve. I mean, there's much more to come. We all seen with the climate crisis narratives. Is it going to be the bird flu? Is it going to be the fake alien invasion? Is it going to be an election false flag, economic downturn, cybercrime? It ultimately doesn't matter what the details are, slightly, because all you need to focus on is the solutions, exiting and building, getting out of these systems. Because I promise you, my friends, it doesn't matter if Donald Trump wins, quote unquote, wins the selection, or if they go with the narrative, which I got a little bit of money on, that they might pull this come behind out of nowhere, RFK wins and defeats the system, and everybody believes, oh my God, we actually defeated them. If they pull that one out, we might be in for some rough times. But the point is, no matter who it is that wins, we're going to be in for some rough times, and they are not going to solve this. Because even if we were to trust that Joe Biden, Donald Trump, and RFK Jr. are genuinely good guys just out to do what they think is best for the country, even if that was true, the entire system involving intelligence networks and this, I hate the term deep state because it's been bastardized, but the shadow government, the predator class that really runs things, the pyramid of power, they will not let one individual come along and change things. We already saw this with Ron Paul back in the day. We've seen this with plenty of other people. So the answer then is to not put your faith or your time in that system, and instead just put your nose down and focus on what you can do for your family in your community. If we each do this in little pockets all around the world, we will create parallel systems, parallel structures. And I know that none of us can predict what that's going to look like. But again, if we don't start now, we're never going to get there. Instead, we're just going to keep watching each other on the internet, complaining, making memes, doing videos, and it's so sad how fucked up everything's getting. It's getting so miserable. And okay, the cage is almost done. We're nearly there, but I guess I won't do anything. I remember somebody talked about a long time ago about exiting and building and doing stuff, but well, it feels a little too late for that now. And things are scary now. Like if you think things are scary now, wait till it gets scarier later when it's even less safe to speak out, when it's even less safe to talk like this, right? This is why we need to act now. If you see what's coming, stop putting your faith in false solutions. Stop putting your faith in false heroes. All right, I think I've been ranting about this for quite some time now. I know there's a lot of good comments, and I appreciate everybody who is commenting. I do want to, one more time, remind you guys to go to theconsciousresistance.com. This is where you can see my presentations that go much deeper into this and a little bit more organized than my rambling thoughts here tonight. I've got dozens of talks going deep into the exit and build idea. In fact, probably the one that I would recommend, I just loaded to YouTube the other day, but go through this, make time. These are all on our Spotify as well. If you go to the Conscious Resistance, if you look on the website, it has the audio links there as well. You can download them. But I did this one called Exit and Build, Creating the 2030 of Your Dreams back in November 2022. And also I did 5 steps to build conscious community. That one's a good one. I did exit and build, where to start and what to avoid. Those are all good. So the point is, go to the presentations or go to the website and search exit and build, and you'll get a lot more info. But let's go ahead. We're going to move to our second story of the evening. And it's actually not even a full story. It's just, we're going to catch up a little bit and share about what's coming up with my next article, ongoing investigation into Bethany Christian Services. For those of you who have not been paying attention, Bethany Christian Services is a adoption firm that offers a number of different services. Obviously, the name implies they promote themselves as being Christian. And I was contacted by a reader, a listener a while back, who informed me that this organization and many like it within the adoption industry are not what they claim to be. I think most people probably buy into this fairy tale version, which I will say is the best case scenario. And some people do have these experiences, but it seems to be increasingly rare that a baby is unwanted, say from a abusive parent, a parent on drugs, or the parents die, something along those lines. The baby gets into the adoption system, a family who can't have kids or whatever the situation is, they adopt the child, they give the child a wonderful life, and they grow up to be sound, wonderful adults. Obviously, that's not always how things turn out. I wish it were, but as I've learned more and more with my investigations into Bethany Christian Services, including my articles at The Last American Vagabond, it doesn't always turn out that way. So let me go ahead and show you some of the work I've done already on this topic real quick. Again, go to theconsciousresistance.com. You can check out all the latest content there. And you'll go back a little bit here. A couple of weeks ago, I did this one, where are we at? The last one on Bethany Christian Services. Mothers speak out against the practices of Bethany Christian Services. That was my second piece that came out just recently. There's a video breakdown. Again, none of this is on my old YouTube channel because this is before I got brought back on. And honestly, I'm not sure if I'll put it on there because they might delete me for talking about this, because Bethany Christian Services is known to sue families who speak out about their actions. So let me go here. I did this interview a couple of weeks ago with author, journalist Catherine Joyce. She has a book called The Child Catchers. The full title is The Child Catchers, Rescue, Trafficking, and the New Gospel of Adoption. And I interviewed her about the adoption industry and how there are conservative Christian organizations who are against abortion on one hand, and so they're funneling money into adoption services, and it's not always just, again, that best case scenario I just described. Oftentimes they're going into situations where parents have been told that they're adopting kids whose parents are dead or they were irresponsible parents. And then they find out later that their parents were alive and that the parents were told that the child was going to the US to get an education. These things are not uncommon. In my second article, which you can see here at The Last American Vagabond, called Bethany Christian Services, Mothers Speak Out, I spoke with several mothers directly, 3 mothers specifically that spoke publicly about their experiences with Bethany Christian Services. And they just describe all kinds of messed up stuff, guys. I really don't want to repeat myself too much, so I do encourage you to go to the website and watch the video or read the article, because this is my firsthand. This is reporting that I'm honestly proud of, because these are people who I talk to directly. This is not me rehashing somebody else's reporting, which sometimes is important and necessary, but this is my own original investigation brought to my attention by my readers, backed up by documentation. I talked to three different women, Jennifer, Charity J, and Mickey. And they share their stories. And of course, like I said, this is just the second part in my series. The first part was just a bigger look at who Bethany Christian Services and who the adoption, what the adoption industry is about. This is $1 billion, dozens of billions of dollar industry per year. And this quote unquote Christian firm, Bethany Christian Services, has been accused of manipulation, negligence, and even human trafficking by a Tennessee government official. I am still on this case, and I'm going to be releasing a new article later this week, earliest this week, maybe early next week. We'll see. But for this final piece, as I mentioned here at the end of the bottom of the article, I'll just read you guys my my kind of final piece of this article here. This is Jennifer's story. Jennifer says, these days, Jennifer says she wants more people to understand the truth of adoptions and how it impacts the birth mothers. She says birth mothers live their lives with grief, second guessing every decision they make, and living in fear of having their children taken away from them. And she says, quote, we're told specifically, move on with our lives, pretend that it's not happening. I'm tired of that. I'm tired of not having a voice. There are so many of us, and we're coming out of the woodwork. And I think that's a very powerful statement. So as I write here in part 3, I'm going to be looking at the international adoption industry and the organizations which are working to give mothers, birth parents, a voice. So I'm going to share a little bit more about this with you. And I just want to preface this if you're starting to kind of doze off here, because I tend to see this, the independent alternative media crowd, a lot of you who follow, like I was complaining about just clicking from, you go to one podcast to the next podcast. A lot of us, I'll include myself, have been desensitized. And so maybe you're like, oh, great, Derrick, adoption story. Does it have Jeffrey Epstein in there? Is there any famous person or a celebrity involved? Oh, okay, never mind. I don't care. It's like, again, the being black-pilled. People want the most fucked up, horrifying stories. And if that's not what it is, if it's just, general run-of-the-mill corruption and bad things, people are like, oh, whatever, who cares? But I'm telling you, this Bethany Christian Services and this adoption industry story is huge. It does relate to human trafficking in the bigger picture. I've done interviews in the past on CPS and the problems associated with CPS and the foster industry. There's this whole thing with the WASP program that you may have heard about on some recent Netflix documentaries I'll be writing about. This is all related to the way that children are treated, and in this case with the adoption, the way that the mothers are so mistreated and lied to. This is a huge story, and I want more and more people to pay attention to it. So in this next article, I'm going to be looking at a couple of organizations, and I'll highlight these to you right now. One is called Saving Our Sisters, and I'm really excited to talk to Renee and Lisa, the women who founded Saving Our Sisters, because both of them had horrifying stories relating to adoption and just the treatment that these women go through. And so they decided to found Saving Our Sisters. As you can see here, it says, you are not alone. Saving Our Sisters is dedicated to supporting all members of expectant families considering adoption. We focus on ensuring families do not apply a permanent solution to a temporary situation. And what they do for families, they give them information and education about adoption agencies and other legal professionals and things that they won't tell them necessarily. They give them detailed facts explaining possible risks and allowing them to make an informed choice. They offer them support in different ways. They do everything they can to help them. They advocate for the mothers, one-on-one support. I mean, this seems like a really good organization based on what I've seen. And what I like here is they also have these testimonials, real-life success stories from parents who were considering adoption for one reason or another, sometimes because they were poor or they just were broke at the time or they weren't expecting a new baby. And so they start considering adoption because they figure that's better than abortion. And then they come to meet Saving Our Sisters and learn a little bit more about the adoption industry and realize that that's not necessarily a guarantee. I know that some people would say, well, hey, at least these babies aren't being aborted. That's better off. And, I'll leave that up for somebody else to decide. But I think that if you really care about life, you should care about life after birth as well. And if these children stay alive and they're not aborted, but then they're going to some crazy messed up adoption industry where their parents are potentially lied to and where they're misinformed, how is that good for them? To a lot of these children, as the women described to me in my article, the children who grow up to be adults are not necessarily living healthy lives. Some of them themselves get into drugs, they get into abuse, they get into young motherhood and young parenthood. So if you care about the parents, then we need to care about life as well. And so that's why I appreciate that Saving Our Sisters is putting themselves there up as a resource. Another one, let's look up the Vance twins, I think is it. adoption truth. Because I was saying this recently to those of you who might not know this, that this is a whole like industry. This is a whole like, let me see, adoption, I have to find it, adoption truth. This is a whole different like sector of the truth community that I don't think a lot of us are aware about. Like, you know, we know about conspiracies, we know about the central bank, and we know about this thing and that thing, but not so many people are aware of this sector, that there's also messed up stuff happening in the adoption industry. And so some people refer to it as adoption truth. In fact, the Vance twins, the Vance sisters, this is their website, they started something called Truth and Transparency, the Adoption Truth Network. I think the full name is the Adoption Transparency Network. And similarly, they highlight stories of people who've been mistreated within the industry. They promote the resources for families. They also, because both of them, the twins, are South Korean, I believe, they were adopted, and the whole South Korean adoption industry is like a whole nother thing. Like that, this, you know, I've been focusing on Bethany Christian Services related to the United States, but they're international, and there are groups like this all over the world. So this is the Adoption, Truth, and Transparency Worldwide Information Network, and a publishing company. They've published some books telling their stories. And like I said, this goes into bigger things with the Korean adoption industry. And I'm planning on writing more about all of this. That'll be in my third piece, focusing on some of these organizations that are stepping up to the plate and trying to offer these mothers and these women some resources that they might not have known about. And again, that they might have been lied to directly about in terms of what the adoption was going to entail. Because essentially, a lot of these mothers are told that it's going to be an open adoption. Look, you know, you're a poor mom, you know, you can't take care of your baby. So just give it up to us, and we promise it's going to be in a wonderful home. You're going to get letters. You'll be able to stay in your child's life, and everything's going to be great. And if you need any mental help, if you got therapy, we're going to help you with that. We'll provide all those resources. Most of it turns out to be total bullshit. It turns out to be complete bullshit. And in fact, after the mother, let's say, expresses some interest in the adoption, if she starts to maybe rethink it, they, as I was told by several women, and you can find the stories on these websites, they were told, well, it would be a shame if somebody called the CPS and told them that you, this poor mother who can't really afford to have a baby, is planning on having your baby. And it would be a shame if they came into your house to make sure that, you know, everything was up to par. Basically just kind of very thinly veiled threatening them, encouraging them to continue and go forward and go through with the process, whether they want it or not. So that is an ongoing investigation that I have. Bethany Christian Services, expect another article on that very soon. And I'm excited because it's going to be probably the last one for a little while. I'm not going to lie. I will be continuing to follow the ongoing stories related to the adoption industry now that I'm aware of it. But that's probably going to be my last one for a little bit. Now, the final story I want to go over, and this will sort of hopefully bring us full circle, because we're going to talk briefly again about exit and build. And hopefully I've already explained that well enough and hit you over the head a little bit tonight, saying stop paying attention to lying politicians and actually focus on solutions. But we're going to get more back into that in a moment. First off, though, I do see some comments, and I see some old friends, including Anarcho Rica. When did this channel get reinstated? Literally just like a week and a half ago at most. It just came out of nowhere. All of a sudden, as you know, this channel has been the one I've been broadcasting on for years, and I stopped, and it just turned back on. Now I saw somebody here saying, why do we not like taxes? Something like that, which I would assume is from a European. And I think I saw him from Norway. And I don't mean that to be offensive. I just mean, I think that the Europeans, that you guys have been propagandized to think taxes are a good thing. I don't know if you caught the whole show, Daniel, but involuntary taxation is not only immoral, it's just plain wrong. And essentially, if you take the whole government gobbledygook out of the situation, it's extortion. It's the threat of violence at a gun. Because I imagine if you didn't pay your Norway taxes that you say you get a lot in return for, that they might come after you eventually. They might try to start taking your wages out, or maybe they've already created a system where there's literally no way for you to even avoid the taxes. But don't you think you should have the freedom to choose? I guess us crazy Americans, it's not that we're afraid of taxes, it's that many of us realize that they're wrong and that they're immoral, and that if I want to pay for something, I should have the right to choose to do that. And in fact, we live in a world now where we have technology that would allow, if they wanted to, they could create a system that says, okay, it's going to be taxation, but you get to choose where your money goes from. And guess what? We would see really quickly that nobody would want to fund the war if it came out of their own actual pocket where people had to see it. I mean, maybe you get the most hardcore neocons and neoliberals who want to give Israel bombs, but I guarantee you they wouldn't be getting $60 billion or whatever. They would be getting very little. If we had the opportunity to say, okay, I'll pay taxes, but I want to make sure it goes to the roads in my neighborhoods, or I want to make sure that builds better schools in my community, or some idealized situation. I'm not even saying this would necessarily work. Being flawed humans, it probably wouldn't. But the point is, if we had a choice, people would probably choose to voluntarily contribute to their communities if they knew it was going to empower them. Instead, we're forced under the threat of coercion, of violence, of being hauled away to prison if we don't pay the extortion fees. And I don't see how any good person can claim that that's a good thing. Even if you say, I like the things I get in return, but what about the people in Norway who say, I don't like those things? Do they not matter? I mean, this is why democracy is flawed, because it essentially does come down to mob rule. And maybe that's not where you're at right now, but I think that's what many of us have come to see. So shout out to all the volunteerists in the house. All right, let's go to our final story of the night. I don't know if you guys have seen this one, but old Klaus Schwab is under fire now. Yep, the Wall Street Journal this last week, behind Davos, claims of a toxic workplace. Despite its lofty goals, the World Economic Forum faces numerous accusations of sexual harassment and discrimination against women and Black people. This was published June 29th, so just over 10 days now. A few years ago, Klaus Schwab, I'm not even going to read this thing, but you guys kind of get the point. I have another article here that does a good job of summarizing it. We'll just read the summary because we don't really need to read the whole thing. But it says that, according to the report, multiple female staffers have gone on record accusing Schwab and other higher-ups of the organization of making sexually suggestive comments and engaging in inappropriate behavior. One female staffer claimed that Schwab even physically posed in a sexually suggestive manner in front of her. God help her. I'm not trying to laugh. Like, if this is accurate, I mean, that's a horrible experience, I'm sure. Nobody wants to see Klaus Schwab posed in a sexually suggestive manner. And he told her he wanted to see her in a Hawaiian costume. I'm guessing he meant he wanted to see her in a skirt. Schwab is also said to have told multiple women employees, quote, I need to find you a man. And if I were not married, I'd put myself at the top of the list. You know, just general old creepy guy stuff. One of the staffers stated, quote, I knew he liked me and I knew he found me pretty. Every man with a lot of power think that they can get any woman they want and they are not ashamed. Another woman said that, quote, there was a lot of pressure to be good looking and wearing tight dresses. Never in my career have I experienced looks being such an important topic as in the forum. And several other women accused Klaus Schwab of slowing their careers down or pushing them out of the organization after they become pregnant or were on maternity leave. And of course, he denies all allegations. And they say that, you know, it's not true. And this, of course, comes as he stepped down last month. You guys might have seen this, as the executive chairman of the organization. So they gave him some other title, like he's still like the executive advisor, but he's no longer officially the executive chairman. So first he's stepping down from the organization that so many people have woken up to in the last couple of years. And then now there's these sex abuse claims coming out at him. And I was talking with Jason Burmis on his show earlier today, and I made the following points. For one, like, part of this is just garbage, right? It's like rich people, tabloids, you know, gossip, whatever. But at the same time, if these women were abused by Klaus Schwab, that's a serious matter, regardless of who he is, but especially because a person in his position of power, which, by the way, he has no power. He's an unelected person who just has an organization. And the only reason that he has any power is because, for one, we pay so much attention to him, but because the corporate media has put him up on a pedestal, when in reality, he's just some old freaking German guy who may or may not be connected to the Nazis, who is coached by Kissinger and deep ties to the Club of Rome, and is a eugenicist promoting the fourth industrial revolution, the internet of bodies, the internet of humans, the internet of things, et cetera, right? But he has no actual power. Why does this matter then? It matters because, as I mentioned a moment ago, this stepping down, I think we might be, and I have no evidence of this at the moment, but I think we might be witnessing a reshuffling of the chairs. So first, Klaus Schwab says he's going to resign, kind of take a back role. And they may have done that because they anticipated that this story was coming out. That might have been a preemptive move where the World Economic Forum said, okay, this story is coming out soon. Klaus, we need you to step down, so that he didn't have to step down in response to the story and look all bad. It's like, okay, well, maybe they said that about Klaus, but he's not our executive chairman anymore, so it doesn't matter, right? Also, I think that the world has woken up to the World Economic Forum, but how many people even know the Bilderberg Group? The Bilderberg Group just met a month and a half ago in May, and only Dan Dix, Josh Friedman, Charlie Skelton, and a couple other indie journalists were there. Less and less people know about the Bilderberg Group, but it seems like during the COVID era, the World Economic Forum kind of became the face for this, and so many people don't like Klaus Schwab for all kinds of stuff, and a lot of fake news out there, unfortunately, but for his Great Reset plan and all these things. So it could be that the predator class has figured, like, Klaus, you're just too unpopular to be the face of this now. We're going to have to replace you. And maybe he didn't want to step down. Maybe they had to force him to step down. And maybe part of this was publishing this article to kind of damage his reputation. So then the World Economic Forum could put somebody else, some new puppet in his place. My guess is they're going to pick a woman, especially after this scandal. Maybe they will put Klaus Schwab's own daughter. But whoever it is, it ultimately doesn't matter. My point is two things. While we've been paying so much attention to the World Economic Forum, less people are paying attention to the Bilderberg Group. And by the way, the Bilderberg Group steering committee member, one of them is Palantir funder, investor Peter Thiel, also founder of PayPal, who also helped fund, you guessed it, Rumble, that so many people out there are supporting and happy about. That's why I personally stay off it. I'm very skeptical, but Palantir is the bigger thing. The Bilderberg Group is still powerful players, and they've sort of stayed behind the scenes. They've had to create a public website and put out topics, but some of you who weren't awake 13, 12, 10 years ago, you might not remember that there was a time when the Bilderberg Group didn't have a website, when they didn't release any topics about it, that it was people like investigative journalist Jim, his name escapes me. Some of you probably know him, the old school Bilderberg guy who's been following them since like the 70s, even before the internet. He died not too many years ago. He would get the list of topics from an insider, and that information would get out. People would go to the location, they would confront them, and the mainstream media would totally act like it wasn't happening. Now Bilderberg had to put up a website and kind of have a public front facing, but the World Economic Forum took the center stage. I think what we're essentially witnessing is maybe the World Economic Forum has become too exposed, and Klaus Schwab too exposed, and too many people resisting and pushing back and watching what they're doing. Not so many people watching the Bilderberg Group, not so many people watching the Club of Rome, not so many people watching the Summit of the Future coming up in New York City, September 21st to the 23rd, where the world governments are going to sign the Pact for the Future. Yeah, you should be paying attention to that. So those are my theories, that on one hand, this could just be a reshuffling of the deck. They recognize that Klaus Schwab's unpopular and they're pushing him out. But the final point here is that they don't matter. They don't matter. We shouldn't be paying as much attention to them as we have. And I write articles about them whenever I think it's necessary. I pull up information that I think you should know. Hey, look what the bad guys are planning. But again, back to exit and build. If you're exiting a building like Homeboy, who was talking about earlier, having land in Vermont, and somebody else was talking about living in a van, and whatever your lifestyle, you might be listening and you're like, oh, look, guess what? Klaus Schwab's talking about putting chips in our brains. And you shrug it off because you're in your backyard planting another row of crops and you've just harvested your latest one. Or, you're listening to a documentary that's giving you new skills and making you more useful as a human being. And you're doing so on your Above book or on a de-Googled phone, not on a Google or Microsoft or Apple browser or device, right? Like, if you're already exiting the building, if you're already forward thinking and working on solutions, none of this stuff really matters because they're going to keep doing what they're going to keep doing and you're going to keep doing what you're doing. But if you're paralyzed in fear and you're not doing anything, or you've allowed yourself to become blackpilled because all the other channels that you scroll through tell you how fucked up the world is and that there's no way out of this because they have no solutions and because they make money off telling you fear. My channel's not monetized. I'm not making any money off you guys right now. If you want to make money, if you want to donate to me, that's a whole separate process. But the people who are dependent on your views via Rumble or YouTube or elsewhere, of course they're going to keep giving you clickbait videos. Of course they're going to tell you that the Civil War is on the horizon for the 100th time. Of course they're going to show you the videos of Americans and Europeans and Africans and Australians fighting in the streets because it serves their goals. I'm not saying that everybody who does that is a shill or that they're only financially motivated, but I think that's the danger, that some people get sucked into this loop of the black pilling and they just, everything's fucked, everything's screwed. And they have no solutions because maybe they're like, well, I'm monetizing conspiracies and I guess that's good enough for now. I've got money, I've got a house, But guess what? Having money and having a house doesn't say anything about whether you're free from the slavery systems, because there's a lot of people who got money in the bank, but if shit shut down tomorrow and the grocery stores ran out of food, they would be dead in a week or two. Maybe they'd have some money to buy extend their life a little bit longer. But there are plenty of rich people who have no skills, who have no food storage, who have no solar backup batteries or, anything like that. And I'm not preaching doomsday, prepare for the end of the world. I'm just saying, like, for example, it's hurricane season. Wouldn't it be nice to be prepared, to think ahead? That's all I'm saying. And guess what, guys? We've been propagandized to believe that preparation, aka prepping, is like, oh, doomsday preppers, you're some conspiracy theorist, crazy wacko for thinking 6 months ahead or for thinking 1 year ahead or 5 years ahead, when that is the way that every single one of our ancestors survived and got us here to where we are now. If our ancestors didn't plan for the winter, we wouldn't have made it. We wouldn't have got to this point. So don't allow these liars, these thieves, these criminals to fool you into thinking that planning a couple of months ahead or a year ahead and having a vision that doesn't depend on their system is a bad idea. Don't build your life around the illusion that this Babylon, fake, corrupt system is going to be there for you forever. They will sell you dreams of making money and chasing the riches and chasing the attention and dopamine likes and all this stuff. And it's going to crumble before your eyes. The answer is to exit from their systems, to stop depending on the Bilderberg Group and the World Economic Forum, and let them do their crazy things. Keep spreading information where you can. Share my videos, share other channels that actually have something to say. But most importantly, if you take anything away from this broadcast, take care of yourself for the good of everyone else. Focus on yourself and your family.
So I've recently partnered with my friend Sean Hawkins of the company Cultivated Mind. He focuses on organic mushroom extracts, which are designed to help you physically, mentally, and maybe even more than that. I've just been testing them out recently. You may have seen my interview with Sean discussing this. We went over some of the specific benefits of the various types of mushrooms that Sean uses. I think it's a really exciting product to be a part of, because not only are they organic, they're non-GMO, but if you know anything about mushrooms, as more and more of us have been learning about the benefits of mushrooms, not just psychedelic mushrooms, but all types of mushrooms, then you understand that they are a great boon to your health. So Sean recently hooked me up, and I've been trying the Brain Squared, which is for gut pea flower extract, ashwagandha. I also recently picked up the Radiant Energy, which is for pre and post workout. So I go to the gym 3 or 4 times a week, and now starting to take these before and after. These feature cordyceps, reishi, and chaga. And finally, he's got Immune Renew, which is obviously for immunity. This one features chaga, turkey tail, reishi, maitake, shiitake, and extract of nattokinase. I encourage you to go visit the website. It is cultivated-mind.com. And of course, we have a special deal and a discount for those of you who want to purchase them through my link at cultivated-mind.com/cm/broze, BROZE. You can check out the link on the screen right now, or wherever you're watching, check out the link below the video.
All right. So that was the Cultivated Mind. That is, again, another company that I'm supporting. You can check them out, as I mentioned in that video, on the website. Go there. You can find the interview with Sean. Check out that link. I'm trying to support companies that are local to where I live, where I'm from, back in Texas, and that are actually bringing you good products, and I hope you guys will check them out. That's also another way to support my work. So we're about to wrap up here in just a few minutes. We're going to have a conscious music video, but as we have been doing, we're going to have another segment of What's Derrick Reading, and you can see my books back here. And I just like to highlight different ones. And also it kind of reminds me, like when I pick up a book and it's dusty, it's like, wow, I probably should read this soon. It's getting dusty. But this week, we're looking at a book called The Hidden History of the Human Race. Hopefully you guys can see that, by, let me take that off, Michael Cremo and Richard L. Thompson. Hidden History of the Human Race, right there. And I'll read the back to you. We'll talk a little bit about this. I will say on the front page, it has a quote from Graham Hancock, author of Fingerprints of the Gods, love him or hate him. And it says, one of the landmark intellectual achievements of the late 20th century. And it says here, over the past 2 centuries, researchers have found bones and artifacts showing that people like ourselves existed on Earth millions of years ago. So this is why it's pretty controversial. He says that humans have been on the planet for millions of years. But the scientific establishment has suppressed, ignored, or forgotten these remarkable facts. Why? Because they contradict the now dominant view of human origins, which holds that humans like ourselves evolved within the past 100,000 years from more ape-like ancestors. The Hidden History of the Human Race, a book sure to ignite controversy, brings these paradigm-breaking discoveries to light, deploying an unexpectedly great number of convincing facts, deeply illuminated with critical analysis. Cremo and Thompson challenge us to rethink our understanding of human origins, identity, and destiny. And it says Michael Cremo is an author, researcher specializing in the history and philosophy of science. His persistent investigations during the 8 years of writing The Hidden History of the Human Race documented a major scientific cover-up. Meanwhile, Richard L. Thompson received his PhD in mathematics from Cornell University. He's the author of scientific books and articles on evolutionary biology. And in 1984, he initiated the intense research effort that culminated in the publishing of this book. Again, The Hidden History of the Human Race. And I'll show you guys this. I actually interviewed Michael Cremo. This is one of my old school interviews. This was 2017. Forbidden Archaeology with Michael Cremo. I encourage you to check this out. This was at, shout out to anybody who remembers the Free Your Mind conference back in the day in Philadelphia in the US. And I got to talk to Michael about it. I think it's maybe just like a 10, there you can see a young Derrick Broze right there with shorter but still long hair. I think it's like a 10-minute interview, so obviously not super, super in-depth, but it gives you a rundown of his work and sort of what he's about. It's actually a 20-minute interview, so you can find that at theconsciousresistance.com if you just search Forbidden Archaeology or Michael Cremo. But yeah, let's talk about it for a moment. What do you guys think? I mean, I don't really have any deeply held opinions or beliefs on this, but I'm looking at the comments right now. Do you guys buy the general belief that we've been here for about 10,000 years? Or maybe do you buy the Christian belief that we've only been here for a couple thousand years? Or do you think it's something closer to what Michael Cremo is talking about, and it could be millions of years, or at least hundreds of thousands of years? And not just saying like that the planet existed, but that human life existed. And not only does he say like human life existed, like talking about, oh, there used to be some distant Neanderthals. He actually talks about like weaponry, and his belief is that some of the Hindu mythology and some of the Hindu scriptures are actually describing like nuclear wars in the past and different things. And as you can kind of see, let me show, this will work. They've got like different diagrams and stuff of like bones and archaeological findings in here that you can look through. Here's another like a jawbone or something. And yeah, so it's a cool book. I encourage you to check it out. We got a couple comments here. Some people have heard of him. Okay, he was on the Art Bell show several times. Fascinating. Seen him on Regina Meredith's show. He's great. Very cool. And I didn't spawn from a monkey. Black Fang says, I want to believe the narrative about alien races waging wars on Earth, right? I mean, that like the Sumerian myths, right? Talk about something like humanity as a slave between either alien races or between two gods that we may have interpreted to be aliens or vice versa. It's a strange, crazy world out there, my friends. And in fact, I pulled this from my section on the bookshelf here that is dedicated to this kind of stuff. And it's actually probably one of my most favorite parts of stuff, because I like the political intrigue and the geopolitics, but I also like things that like this like tickles my brain. Like, am I ever really going to know the answer? Probably not, but I sure do like learning. I like diving into those rabbit holes and trying to come up and see what comes up and what else holds. So there will be some more exciting stuff to come from that. I'm looking at it right now. Yeah, there'll be some more cool stuff to come from that section of the bookshelf in the coming weeks. And I encourage you guys to check that out. Go back and check out the interview with Michael Cremo at theconsciousresistance.com. We got another comment. Ancient civilizations were far advanced in ways probably true 1 million years plus. I'm not saying I agree. Okay, we got Art Daniels over there still arguing about hierarchies. It's all good, bro. All right, so that's where we're going to wrap things up then. We're going to go ahead and close out with a music video as we always do. But I want to remind you guys one more time to visit theconsciousresistance.com. You heard the comment earlier, Anarcha Rika. She said, Derrick, where did this channel pop up? Now, thankfully, she is somebody who's known for years and has been following me on other places. But to those of you who are watching and saying, Derrick, I thought you disappeared, man. I wondered where you were at. I never disappeared. From the very day I got deleted in October 2020, I continued broadcasting immediately. I broadcasted on Facebook, on BitChute, on Odyssey, and all these places, and I'm still doing so. The website still exists. We've revamped the website since you last saw it. We got a lot of documentaries you need to catch up on. We got solutions-focused presentations on exit and build and on agorism. You got journalism if you want to dive deep into my work on the Utah ritual abuse case, on the Bethany Christian Services. You can check out the Trump deception, my 5G work. You can go back and see everything I reported on during COVID 1984 because you missed it. I started doing walk-in talks. You can check those out. I'll probably do one soon and share that with you guys. I'm going to continue broadcasting. I'm going to continue spreading this information. I'm going to continue touring around the world. I'm doing the People's Reset UK coming up in September. If any of my friends over there in the UK want to come visit us in Bath, we're bringing the message of freedom cells, of exit and build to the UK. I'm probably going to be doing an event in Denmark. Stay tuned for information about that. And I'm here in Mexico and in Texas working on our land here. I'm not just talking about and shouting at the camera these ideas. I'm living them. We've got land now. We're working with a group of people to build this eco-village that we want, and we're going to use it as a hub, not just for ourselves, but what we call the Holistic Education Center, where we can host events where you guys can come learn directly. You can share your skills. You can learn more about permaculture, getting out of big tech, getting out of the financial system, and getting, most importantly, this is where we'll wrap things up, exiting and building from unhealthy mindsets and from limiting beliefs, the internal tyrant, your own doubts, fears, and insecurities that can hold you back. And I don't care how big of a man or how strong of a woman you are, we all have doubts, fears, and insecurities. They pop up in different ways, in different circumstances, in different situations for different people. But at the end of the day, oftentimes it is that voice, that internal tyrant, which is holding us back from taking these other steps to exit and build. Because your internal tyrant will pop up and it'll give you a million different excuses why you shouldn't try something new. You should just stay in the same old pattern you've been used to. Just keep watching the YouTube videos. Just keep watching things get bad. Don't bother actually trying to focus on solutions. Don't listen to this guy telling you to think ahead. That takes time. That takes energy. And we're comfortable. I'm comfortable in my laziness and I'm comfortable in my misery. Yeah, things might be rough, but at least I have what I have. And if I change, well, that's hard. That's tough. That might mean rearranging my life and rethinking my job. It might actually mean quitting my job. It might actually mean changing friends and moving to different places. If I actually chose to one day decide, you know what? I'm going to live in line with my values. I'm not just going to talk about them and think, yeah, I'm a good person. I love freedom and this and that. I'm going to actually do this holistic self-assessment and look at my life and see which areas of my life are out of alignment and how I can step into actually living my values mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually, and then be a living example to other people and watch it ripple out and continue to inspire other people. Because my friends, here's the big secret. That's all I've been doing for the last 14 years. Going on this path, letting Creator open up doors for me, walking through them, and just pushing through as a journalist, as an activist, as a human being. None of us are perfect. I'm not perfect by any means, but I do see the impact of my actions. I hear people telling me, this thing that you wrote, this book you did, this documentary, this video, it helped me in this way. Now I'm doing these things in my life. Now I'm growing food. Now I'm homeschooling my kids. Now I'm learning about these topics, and I'm feeling empowered. I'm feeling activated. That's what I care about. I'm not here to sell you bullshit solutions about voting for politicians who are going to sell you out as soon as they get a chance. I'm here to give you real ideas on real, tangible, practical solutions. One more time, download the book, How to Opt Out of the Technocratic State, theconsciousresistance.com/how-to. And there's also an audiobook there. You can listen to the free audiobook. It's on Spotify. It's on Odyssey. It's on all those places. So thank you guys so much for listening tonight. We're going to end with a music video, as we always do, highlighting a conscious artist. This one is from Presence, my brother Presence, coming out of Arizona, who's going to be performing at the People's Reset in the UK in Bath in September. Check it out at thegreaterreset.org or thepeoplesreset.org. This is Presence. It's called Bloom. Until next time, my friends, remember, you are powerful. You are beautiful, and you are free. Peace.
Moving consciously, and then we know it's time to freedom of our mind, and then we know it's time to moving consciously, and then we know it's time to freedom of our mind, and then we know it's time to head first. We facing our reality. Once a dream created actuality, and we will not go quietly. The crystal temple body in vitality, awareness of our actions in morality, acceptance of this earthly realm duality, appreciating mind, and then we know
I
it's
see
time
the
to
truth inside my mind, that what we do to realign our soul and mind are one with I, breathing in the field of time. So bloom, like the flowers of the earth, it's time to bloom. Take our power back from curse, it's time to bloom. Open up the petals of creation, no more chasing, no more wasting, life is sacred. So take a minute and let it sink in, just for living you know that you love. Care for what's given and sent from above, to let our spirit descend to the body. We lift up our sin like a dove, no regret in the soul is made perfect. Even our worst sins can't be reversed, and love is the birth, we don't need a church. Infinite mother, she live in the earth, awaken the dream and live in the seasons. Let your vibration be what you believe, and lit like a beacon, we giving them freedom. And we live in the garden of Eden, hey.
Head first, we facing our reality. Once a dream created actuality, and we will not go quietly. The crystal type of body in vitality, awareness of our actions in morality, acceptance of this earthly realm duality, appreciating nature in her majesty. Freedom of our mind, and then we know it's time to learn from our mistakes. We moving forward, power versus force. The map is in the head, but in the heart's a compass, my true north. Singing this song to resonate my throat and cast a spell for growth. Uniting the heads and hearts of those who seek the passion and the flow. We moving consciously, and then we know it's time to bloom in this your life, and know that no one is coming to save you. I realize that only I hold keys to my own cage, and likewise you're the only one to make sure that you're not a slave. We moving consciously, my people, wake up, shape up, moving our body and mana and pranayama. Stay hydrated and shake the sticks and parasites from in the gut, and only then you'll have the juice to take the ones outside of you. And then we know it's time to freedom of our mind, and then we know it's time to moving consciously, and then we know it's time to freedom of our mind, and then we know it's time to moving consciously, and then we know it's time to freedom of our mind, and then we know it's time to moving consciously, and then we know it's time to freedom of our mind, and then we know it's time to moving consciously, and then we know it's time to freedom of our mind, and then we know it's time to moving consciously, and then we know it's time to freedom of our mind, and then we know it's time to moving consciously, and then we know it's time to once a dream created actuality, moving consciously, and then we know it's time to crystal type of body in vitality, moving consciously, and then we know it's time to acceptance of this earthly realm duality, moving consciously, and then we know it's time to freedom of our mind, and then we know it's time to
Since 2012, the Conscious Resistance Network has been an independent media organization focused on empowering individuals through education, philosophy, health, and community organizing. We work to create a world where corporate and state power do not rule over the lives of free human beings. Our motto is leading by example and helping others in their pursuit of freedom. Visit theconsciousresistance.com to find our articles, documentaries, interviews, podcasts, books, and more. Remember, you are powerful, you are beautiful, and you are free.